Okay, so to finish up, was just like I put everything there in a table just to show the differences. So cow, horse, pig, dog, chicken. So I'll basically start with the special features, right? So what's really interesting about the cow is the highly descended ovaries, right? Okay, and the long oviducts. That's it. Highly descended ovaries, right? And the long oviducts. And we say the horns are actually facing caudally, right, towards the ovaries that are descended to a high degree. Special feature in the horses, right? We actually see that there's a large uterine body, right? So special feature in the horses, there's a large uterine body, right? And divergent horns. All right. So the horns actually highly divergent, right? So there is no super body. So large uterine body, right? And we talked about that uterotubal mystery. Then with the pigs, actually, we actually see that what's really interesting there is the long cervix with prominent mucosal rows, actually. And then we see a highly coiled long horns, about 1 meter actually. That we say they're actually mingling with the small intestines. Then with dogs, what's really interesting is that the uterus is dorsal to the gut, which is not much seen in other animals that we talked about there. And their ovaries did not descend. That means the uterine horns and the fallopian tubes are all facing anteriorly. Then looking at the chickens, it's clear there is one ovary, the left one oviduct only, right? Now let's look at the features one by one. So looking at the uterine body, we actually see that for the cows, the uterine body is 3 centimeters short, and there's a pseudo body present, right? And the body is short, but it's actually large, right? And we see those are prominences within the body, the carancles for the attachment of the fetal membranes. Looking at the horse, the body is large, right? And also long. And then we actually see that it's actually 20 centimeters in length. And there's no pseudo body. Why? Because of the high divergence of the fallopian tubes. Then with the pigs, actually, we see that we have a short body, 5 centimeters, right? And a pseudo body is present. So there isn't much divergence with the horns. And the uterine body of the pigs is actually abdominal, right? Why? Because there's a long cervix that stretches over the pelvic rim, right? And then with the dog, there's a short body, 3 centimeters. So if you look at that, we've just seen one animal with a long and large body, the horse. So interesting. With the dogs, we actually see that there's a short body, 3 centimeters, and the body is short and it lies at the pelvic brim. So for the pigs, it's actually the uterus at the pelvic brim. For the dogs, it's actually the body of the uterus. So we also see the pseudo body also being present. So there is a high divergence actually of the uterine horns. Then for the chicken, no uterus. There is a pseudo uterus that actually see being part of the oviduct. Then we go to the uterine tubes or the fallopian tubes. The cows, one of the features, the long oviduct. So I actually see that 30 centimeters of these fallopian tubes. And they're highly coiled so that both of their ends are actually approximated. Remember, we said there's much bending of these ducts, right, towards the ovary that descended to a higher degree. Then looking at the horse, right, the uterine tube, fairly long, is 20 centimeters. And then it's also tutors, right? So these tutors tubes actually, they're also coiled just like for the cow so that both ends are actually approximated, right? So we have not seen much difference there between the horse and the cow besides the length. Looking at the pig, the same length is with the horse, and there's high coiling. So what do we expect the two ends to be approximated? Then looking for the dogs, there's also that the fallopian tubes, even though they're facing anteriorly, but they're also tutors as well, right? And because they're dorsally placed, they're actually covered by fat, all right? So remember the structures that are dorsally placed, like the kidneys, right? They're covered by fat. So by that fact, we actually see that the structure is embedded in fat. And then For the chickens, the uterine tubes, that oviduct, we see it on the left side being the only one actually stretching from the ovary, right, to the cloaca opening on the urodium, right? And we actually see that the oviduct is divided into infundibulum, magnum, uterus, and then the vagina, all right? Then for the uterine horns, actually, looking at this row, right, you can actually see that the longest is seen in the pig. So that's comparative anatomy. So the longest seen in the pigs, the extreme no horns on the chicken, right? Are we together? Then we then see that starting with the cow, we have 35 centimeter, right? These horns actually that actually fused proximally, and there's less divergence. And because of this, we actually see the presence of pseudobody. Then with the uterine horns in the horse, we see there's high divergence, so there is no pseudobody. For the pigs, they're also fused proximally, right? So there is a pseudobody present, and they're highly coiled 1 meter, fusing with small intestines, or actually mingling, that's a better word. And then for the dogs, we have 10 centimeter, right? The horns actually, they're actually slender, right? And actually long, and they're facing cranially. Why are they facing cranially? Because the ovaries did not descend, and they're invested on the dorsal wall. So and for the chickens, we said everything is within this oviduct. For the cervix, looking at all of this, we see that the extreme, we have a long cervix with the pigs and no cervix with the chickens. And then a short cervix with the dogs, right? And here we are seeing actually that for the cow, the cervix is larger than the body. All right. So the cervix is actually larger than is actually longer than the body. So 10 centimeters versus 3 centimeters. Then for the horse, it's 5 centimeters. So also here now is the opposite, right? The cervix actually then shorter than the body. So the difference between a cow and a horse when it comes to the cervix, that in the cow, the cervix is longer than the body. In the horse, the cervix is actually shorter than the body. And with that, that finishes off everything that I have concerning the comparative anatomy of the uteruses of these animals. So any questions?
Hi, Mr. Shabubu.
Yes, sir.
Yes. It's more of an addition, not a question, really. So I think when it comes to comparative anatomy, when you're looking at these animals, we should try and use my terms, right? I say cranial versus caudal, then dorsal versus ventral. Yes. So the reason I'm saying this is I noticed when you were talking about the dog, the horns, you're saying they face anteriorly. Now it presents more of a sort of a bit of confusion because that's one in your table, you're saying it's cranial, right? So cranial, yes. So yeah, so that's fine. That's something I think for terminology. Let's try and use those ones. And
all right, thank you so much. So anyway, right. To also clarify on that, so let me use this picture. That's the one I can actually see presenting that. So looking at that, this is, so for the humans, whatever is going up, that would be cranial. Whatever is going down, that's caudal. But for these, here we see that close to the spinal cord, this is dorsal, right? And this side is ventral, right? And then whatever is facing anteriorly is also cranial. And then whatever is facing posteriorly is also caudal, that is towards the tail. So I think I've made it clear now, right? So anterior, cranial, and also posterior and caudal. So that's really what's really there. And I mean, for the humans, when we come to the abdominal cavity, you know, whatever is anterior is also ventral, right? And whatever is posterior is also dorsal because of the orientation. Thank you so much for that, Sauramba. Anyone else?
Hi, Tafiwa.
Yes.
That was a very good presentation. Yeah, it was good. I liked the way you compared everything. So I just wanted to add a bit on this. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so I wanted to add on an interesting fact that I also found out when I was also looking at the comparative of these animals, especially when it comes to the dogs. Now they were talking about you talked about how the dogs are covered by fat, right? They are in their mesentery, like the broad ligaments that would be holding the uterus is covered by fat, right?
Yes.
And then they also talked about how the uterus, like the broad ligament of the uterus, it will extend and then it to go into the inguinal canal, right? And then inside the inguinal canal, it states that in the dogs, like in the female dogs, that's where there's going to be much herniations happening. So they are quite common in dogs compared to other animals, whereby herniations are said to be only for male animals. But in dogs, we find herniation happening to the presence of broad ligament inside there, which is quite fascinating.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I also found it very interesting. And then also on the cow, we talked about how they are coiled, the horns are curled, right? I also found out something fun whereby they said in cows, the horns, of course, it's on inspection, whereby one will touch the cow and they will see them as if they are coiled together. Rather, they're saying the coiling is due to stimulation by touching. That touching is the one which results in the coiling. That is going to be seen, which is quite something that I found also very much interesting. And then
so stimulation of the animal will lead to coiling of the horns.
Yes, they say that it's not stimulated, they're not coiled, but then the coiling happens due to stimulation. And then the 35 centimeters, which is quite long, they also say that it is found that 1/3 of it is embedded inside the pseudobody, which means when you look at it, of course, the uterine horns, they're 35 centimeters, but instead of it, they are found in the pseudobody, which is quite something I found.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. All right. Anyone else?
Yeah, sorry. When Odette mentioned about the pseudo body, you find that there was a video that I was looking at. They were saying that actually your horns proximally are being joined by what is known as an intercorneal ligament, right? Intercorneal between the corneal. So that then creates that illusion here, the pseudo body that you were talking about. Yeah.
So the intercorneal ligament.
Yeah, that join the two horns proximally. Don't need to get the body is long, and then that's called the pseudo body.
Interesting. Thank you so much.
Yeah. All right. So then another thing is you say the horns here and the horse, right? They are highly divergent, right? So describing the shape there, they say that it's actually T-shaped. If you look at it, then here the dogs, because it's facing cranially, then it's Y-shaped.
Y-shaped.
So that's in terms, yeah. And then you can say here the cow. You can up a diagram with the cow. You see the coiling actually resembles the horns of a ram, right? The ram's horns. So that's just describing the shape that is formed by the coiling. Yeah, exactly. So it's like a ram's horn, right? That's for the cow there. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. Anyone else?
So can you go behind the diagram the chicken showing the magnum etc.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, probably not very important, but it was just something interesting that I found out. So you find at the ovary, right? The mature oocyte, so release is the largest in the animal kingdom. That's what they actually say. It's actually the largest in the animal kingdom, and then you find in the magna apapino release it is actually making up that yolk of the egg. Then in
Yes.
the magnum, that's where you've got adding of your albumin, which forms the white of the egg.
Yes.
Right? That's in the magnum there.
Uh-huh.
Then in the isthmus, you then add the two layers between the albumin and the outer shell. Really. That's
Yes.
where you have got addition of that. Then in this shell gland or the uterus, that's where that hard shell is then developing, and egg actually takes about 20 hours in there. Yeah, so that's something else I found on the chickens.
That's interesting. So we can actually say that also the use of the oviduct is also in modification, right, of the released oocyte from that side, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else?
Hi, Tapiwa. I don't
Yes.
have any questions. It was quite clear.
Thank
you.
so much. All right. All right. So, until next time.